The quiet arrival of a single white envelope at Kensington Palace set off a storm no one could have foreseen. Inside was a DNA test that promised to uncover Diana's final secret. But when Kate opened it, the truth left her breathless, trembling, and in tears. It had come without warning, tucked casually into her morning post as though it were nothing more than another dull palace briefing. Yet the seal was strange, heavy wax stamped with no recognizable crest. The handwriting across the front carried none of the usual royal formality. Kate hesitated, thinking at first it must have been a mistake. Still, something about the envelope, the weight of it, the unsettling stillness pressing against her chest, forced her to tear it open. Inside was a single page. At the top, in bold print, a laboratory header she did not recognize announced, "Confidential DNA report." Kate froze. Her eyes darted down the lines, the words striking her like icy claws. Names she knew far too well, phrases she never imagined she would see together. The implications crashed down faster than her mind could process. The test compared her late mother-in-law, Diana, with another name barely familiar but unforgettable now. And then the conclusion leaped off the page, written in stark clinical clarity, confirming what palace whispers had only dared to imply. Her breath caught, her throat tightened. Her hand shook so violently she nearly dropped the report. Again and again she read the words, desperate for a different result. But it never changed. It could not be denied. What she held was not a mere document. It was a time bomb, silent, devastating, capable of shattering Buckingham's walls from within. Staggering back, Kate clutched the report to her chest. Her eyes darted across the room in panic. Beyond the door, she could hear her children's laughter echoing down the corridors, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering inside their mother's heart. As she stood frozen, memories flooded back. Hushed conversations at dinner, sidelong glances from Charles. Things she had once brushed aside now glimmered with a new, undeniable meaning. For months, perhaps years, whispers had circled. A hidden lineage. Child who carried Diana's blood but not her name. Kate had always dismissed it as cruel gossip. But here, in her trembling hands, was proof that the monarchy's flawless facade concealed something darker, something unspeakable. The timing could not have been worse. Her clashes with Charles over royal duties had already stretched their relationship thin. But now she wondered, had he known all along? Was this why he fought so hard to control her image, to keep her firmly in line? The truth she had just uncovered had the power to topple the monarchy itself. And now she understood why so many had worked tirelessly to bury it. Kate collapsed into the nearest chair, her eyes fixed on the damning words, her cheeks wet before she even realized she was crying. Her soft sobs echoed in the silence. She didn't know what to do, who to trust, or how to move forward. But one truth was inescapable. She could never unsee what she had read. Diana's warning suddenly came back to her with terrifying clarity. Before her death, she had left behind cryptic words, not only for her sons but for the woman who would one day be queen. Words Kate had once dismissed as sentimental suddenly carried dreadful weight. Diana had poured her fears into her diary, written in a frantic, hurried hand, as though the walls themselves were closing in on her. Kate recalled seeing snippets of those entries once, displayed at Althorpe, brushed off at the time as poetic sorrow. But now, holding the DNA report, those same words pierced her differently. Diana had written, "One day she will know. When she is strong enough, she will see why I could never say it out loud." Kate's hands shook harder as more memories surfaced. Letters Diana had sent to a confidant Kate barely knew spoke of a discovery late in her marriage. A secret she had warned must remain hidden at all. Costs. Letters once dismissed as paranoia now stood as proof that the firm would stop at nothing to preserve its image, even if it meant bearing the truth forever. Diana had not described them merely as a family, but as a machine, cold, calculating, merciless. The realization made Kate shiver. Even her early conversations with Charles now reeked of menace. He had once remarked casually that certain aspects of Diana's life were better left buried. At the time, his tone had been so sharp she dared not press him further. Now she could hear it clearly for what it was, not grief but disdain. Beneath it, a warning. It was the weight of knowing. And then there came that foreshadowing connection, something unspoken yet constantly skirted around. Diana's time beyond the palace walls? Her quiet meetings. The shadow of a man never named but always hovering in her stories. What once seemed like gossip now carried the weight of prophecy. Visions of Diana's struggles and her very public pain surged into Kate's thoughts. Oh, it no longer felt like the history of a tragic princess. It was a coded message of survival. She remembered those haunting photographs, Diana staring straight into the camera, her gaze split between defiance and fear. At last Kate understood. Those looks had always been meant for someone. For her. The realization hit her with stunning clarity. Diana had not only left behind sadness and rebellion, she had laid down a path carved in whispers, pages, and fleeting glances, so that when the moment arrived, Kate would find the strength to walk it. Now, standing before that unseen road, she felt its weight pressing upon her chest like a crown of lead. With resolve, Kate began her search through Diana's hidden legacy. Yet what she uncovered only deepened the enigma. Beneath the quiet corridors of Diana's family estate, Althorpe lay a secret archive, untouched, guarded by dust, filled with truths no one dared approach. Kate traveled there under the guise of retreat, claiming solitude and reflection, a much-needed escape from London's watchful eyes. William and the staff believed her. But Kate knew the truth. She had come to confront the ghosts of the past. The sprawling estate, vast and silent, seemed to hold its breath as she entered. Every chamber whispered of Diana, beauty marred by betrayal, secrets left unsaid. And within that silence, Kate felt herself pulled toward the next fragment of the puzzle she could no longer ignore after a discreet exchange with one of the elder housekeepers, a woman who had served the Spencers for decades. Kate was led to a hidden part of the estate few had ever glimpsed. Down a long corridor stood a narrow door, its brass handle dulled with age, its hinges stiff from years of neglect. The woman paused at the knob, her eyes offering Kate a silent warning before stepping away. Alone, Kate opened the door. A rush of cold air swept past her as if the room itself exhaled decades of hidden truths. The chamber was small yet dense with history. Shelves lined the walls, boxes stacked in careful order. At first, the contents appeared ordinary. Old portraits, dusty ledgers, stationery stamped with the Spencer crest. But in the far corner, she saw them. 3 boxes set apart, bound with faded ribbons, and marked in Diana's unmistakable hand. For Catherine, when the time is right, her pulse raced as she lifted the lid of the first. Inside lay letters, hurriedly written, confessional in tone. Diana's voice poured out in ink, desperate to preserve her truth before it could be taken from her. Page after page revealed secret meetings, hushed conversations, and private investigations Diana had conducted into her own life. Among them were photographs, faded but undeniable. They showed Diana with a man Kate did not recognize. His features were striking, regal even, and yet uncannily familiar. Beneath the letters and photos, Kate found something that froze her breath. Sealed envelope marked only with the word DNA. Inside were results hinting that Diana herself had begun unraveling the mystery, now consuming her daughter-in-law. The implications were devastating. Diana hadn't merely suspected, she had known. Kate's hands trembled as she traced the man's face. Something in his eyes sent a chill through her. He was not of the family, yet his claim to it lingered in silence. Slowly, cruelly, Kate realized she was not simply following Diana's trail. She was walking into a storm Diana had foreseen long ago. As she compared the photographs to royal records, the truth unfolded, more dangerous than she had imagined. His name was whispered only in the darkest corners of gossip, a man with Diana's eyes, and a claim to the crown no one wished to acknowledge. Kate stared at the evidence in her hands, her heart hammering as the impossible began to align. The man who appeared again and again in Diana's letters and photographs, always near her, always at the edge of her story, now stood at the very center of a secret too perilous to speak. His place in Diana's life was no longer a matter of rumor. It was carved in her own hand. Each page of Diana's letters whispered of secret encounters, of stolen hours hidden from the palace's watchful eye. She had known him before, that much was clear. But the tone in her writing revealed something deeper, not mere friendship, not mere rebellion, but an intimacy that was deliberate and impossible to dismiss. The likeness was unsettling. Kate saw it in the strong line of his jaw, in the depth of his eyes, in the dark, unruly hair that framed a face she felt she had seen before. It was Harry's face, or rather an older reflection of it, weathered and shadowed by years of exile. The resemblance was so uncanny it made her shudder, and it was this resemblance that gave life to the most poisonous rumors. Was this man more than Diana's confidant? Could he be the hidden reason for Harry's quiet anger, his restless sense of never truly belonging? The deeper Kate searched, the stranger it became. She found traces of a birth, but the official records had been scrubbed. Archives held only fragments. Names crossed out, dates altered, files sealed. Entire chapters of his life had been erased, as if someone had worked tirelessly to scrub him from history, leaving behind only whispers in the dark. Driven by desperation, Kate tracked down one of Diana's oldest confidants, a woman who had buried the past for decades. At first, the woman refused to speak, her silence heavy and unyielding. But when Kate laid a photograph on the table, the silence broke. In a trembling voice, the woman confirmed what the palace had long denied. The man in the picture was real. His life was the final chapter of Diana's defiance, her rebellion carved in flesh and blood. He was not a memory. He was alive. He carried the key to Diana's last act, an act capable of shaking the monarchy to its core. Each revelation tilted Kate's world further into chaos. Fear pressed in, but she could not stop. Her path led her next to the one man she least expected to stand against her. Behind Charles's composed mask was someone who had always known, and who had fought to bury the truth. Kate confronted him, fire in her veins and evidence in her hands. She found him seated in silence, fingers folded as though rehearsing excuses. His calm did not falter at first. He barely glanced at the documents, dismissing them as false, accusing her of being misled by gossip and Diana's ghosts. But Kate would not yield. When she read aloud Diana's words, the names, the dates, the meetings, his mask cracked. His sigh was heavy, his admission inevitable. Yes, the man existed. Yes, he had been part of Diana's life in ways the world was never meant to know. What shook Kate most was not the confession itself, but the revelation that Charles had always known. In a weary tone, he spoke of a decades-old pact, a secret agreement forged after Diana's rebellion to erase this man from history. Records destroyed, stories silenced, rumors smothered, all in the name of protecting the crown. It was done to preserve the institution, he said flatly, as if those words could absolve him. But to Kate it was betrayal. Her voice rose with fury as she accused him of sacrificing Diana for the throne, letting her suffer and die beneath a truth he could have revealed but chose to bury. The accusations fell sharp and fast, each word a blade of anger and disbelief. Charles stood firm, insisting Diana's suffering was the necessary price of monarchy, that the truth would have shattered it all. In that moment, something inside Kate cracked. Years of loyalty and silence, years of playing her role for the palace, suddenly felt hollow. She saw herself in Diana's struggle, realized she too had become a cog in the same machine that destroyed truth for duty's sake. The realization hollowed her, leaving her furious not only at Charles but at herself. The truth pressed down on her like a crushing weight. Yet the final blow came from the past itself. When Kate placed the DNA results before William, the future king broke down. She waited until the children slept, the corridor silent, her hands trembling as she laid the papers out. At first, William glanced casually, expecting some minor family quarrel. But as his brow furrowed and his eyes traced the lines, Kate saw the truth hit him, a truth that left him facing the impossible choice between love and duty. As his eyes scanned the names, the dates, and the damning conclusions written so plainly before him, his body went rigid. The silence between them thickened, pressing down until it became almost unbearable. At last he looked up, and his expression alone told her he already knew. He tried to push back against it, whispering that it couldn't be true, that their family had already endured enough, that such things no longer happened. Yet the weight of his own memories betrayed him. Kate watched as his disbelief slowly crumbled into quiet devastation. The color drained from his face as his mother's whispered confessions came rushing back. Her tears, her streaked defiance, her desperate cries for someone to believe her, Along with those memories came something far darker. Rage. Rage at the father who had stood by in silence. Rage at the monarchy that had demanded her suffering for its survival. For the first time, William allowed himself to wonder whether everything he had believed about his family was nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion. His thoughts turned to Harry, the brother he loved but had never fully understood. Then the realization struck with brutal clarity. If what these results revealed was true, Harry's entire life, his identity, his place in the family, even his anguish, had all been built on a deception no one dared to name. William lowered his head into his hands, torn between two futures. One where he buried the truth and continued serving the crown as expected. Another where he risked everything. His title, his family, even the fragile threads holding the monarchy together, to expose what Diana had so desperately tried to reveal. The weight of that choice was unbearable. Kate reached for his hand, her own voice breaking as she pleaded with him to see what was at stake. She reminded him of Diana's courage, of the trail she had left behind for them to follow, of the pain she had endured in silence because no one stood with her. "Don't let her final secret die with you," Kate whispered. "Don't let her suffer in vain." The words lingered like a vow neither could ignore. William's eyes glistened, caught between the boy who had promised his mother protection and the man now burdened with a kingdom before he could choose. An unexpected ally forced Kate into the spotlight she had never sought. While she and William wrestled with grief, Camilla was already preparing her move. The whispers reached her before their argument behind closed doors had even ended. In a palace built on silence and secrets, nothing stayed hidden for long. Camilla, who had endured decades of judgment and manipulation, had no intention of letting this revelation destroy what she had fought to claim. Where others faltered, she moved with the calm precision of someone who understood the stakes better than anyone else. Kate never saw her coming. Camilla entered her private sitting room unannounced, her expression serene but her eyes gleaming with something darker. With quiet composure, she congratulated Kate on her discovery as if it were a grim achievement. She lowered herself into a chair opposite and began to speak in a tone deceptively warm, almost motherly. She admitted she had known Diana's secret. She had pieced it together years before, and then with chilling ease explained how she had turned that knowledge into power. By remaining silent when it mattered most, she had secured her own place in the monarchy. Kate could barely process what she was hearing. Every word dripped with menace, a reminder of just how far Camilla had gone to hold the crown. Then came the threat delivered with understated cruelty. If Kate dared to speak, she would not only destroy the monarchy, but herself as well. Camilla leaned in, her voice soft yet heavy with intent, suggesting that stories about Kate's family, her past, and even her marriage might find their way to the press. The air grew taut, the tension nearly unbearable. Kate's anger rose, though her voice stayed measured. She reminded Camilla that silence had doomed Diana, that truth was the only path forward, no matter the cost. But Camilla only smiled, a smile empty of warmth, and gave her final warning. If Kate revealed this, she would not only topple the monarchy but bring about her own ruin. That night, Kate lay awake, her mind a storm of fury and fear. Camilla's words echoed, threatening to poison her resolve, but they could not extinguish it entirely. She knew she could not let it end like this. She could no longer hide behind courtesy and silence, while Diana's memory was buried deeper beneath lies. With nowhere left to turn and the palace walls closing in, Kate made her choice. On a cold, gray morning outside Kensington, she faced the cameras. Her voice trembled, her tears unstoppable as she revealed Diana's final secret to the world. It was a decision forged in the dead of night, after sleepless hours and a silence so heavy it nearly crushed her. With every door in the palace shut against her, she chose defiance. She arranged a private press gathering, rejecting royal protocol, defying every expectation of obedience, and disregarding every threat that had been hurled her way. At dawn, reporters and photographers gathered outside the palace gates, their whispers thick with curiosity. They sensed that something monumental was about to unfold. When Kate finally appeared, an instant hush fell over the crowd. She stood before the world, her hands clutching the papers that had sparked the firestorm, and began to speak. Her words were not merely a confession, but a reckoning, the culmination of Diana's pain and her own. She spoke of the Princess of Wales not as a myth or a symbol, but as a woman, brave, wounded, and silenced by those sworn to protect her. She praised Diana's courage to confront truths others had feared, and the trail she had left for someone strong enough to follow. And with trembling hands, Kate raised the DNA evidence. Her voice cracked as she confirmed what the monarchy had denied for decades, that Diana had a hidden child. A son whose very existence proved everything she had suffered and everything she had tried to tell the world. The cameras captured every syllable, every tear streaking down her cheeks, every pause that filled the air with unbearable tension. The reaction was immediate, electric. Shock rippled through the crowd, gasps echoing as people struggled to grasp the weight of her revelation. Within minutes, the news flashed across the globe. Headlines screamed of betrayal, hidden heirs, and royal lies finally exposed. Then came the flood of support, a tide of voices rising to stand with Kate, hailing her not simply as a duchess or future queen, but as the woman who had spoken the truth Diana never could. Inside the palace, however, chaos reigned. The monarchy staggered under the blow, its carefully constructed facade cracking before the world. Centuries of tradition and power trembled under the weight of what Kate had revealed. As the cameras flashed one last time, her strength gave out. Kate's knees buckled and she collapsed into William's arms, her tears soaking his shoulder as his own streamed freely. In that embrace, they both knew nothing could ever be the same. And yet, as the world tried to process the revelation, one haunting question remained unanswered. What would become of Diana's hidden son? Then at last he appeared, the man whose existence rewrote the royal story. He stepped into the light. As cameras rolled and history held its breath, no one knew what to expect. After Kate's stunning confession and the storm of headlines, speculation was rampant. Yet nothing could have prepared them for the moment he took the podium. His presence was calm but commanding, as though years spent in the shadows had forged him into someone the monarchy could no longer control. The crowd fell silent as he adjusted the microphone, the pause stretching unbearably until he finally spoke. His words were brief but powerful, charged with the raw emotion of a man who had waited his entire life to say his mother's name with pride. He called Diana his mother without qualifiers, without apologies, and thanked Kate for the courage he himself had lacked for so long. He admitted that he had always known who he was, but had chosen silence to protect her memory, until now. Each word landed like a hammer blow, shattering decades of carefully crafted illusion. Then came the question everyone feared yet longed to hear. Would he claim what was his? His eyes swept the sea of faces, his jaw set. Though he never said it outright, his measured words hinted at an unsettling truth. His relationship with the crown, with his brothers, and with the royal order itself was far from over. Blood may have been denied, he declared, but it could never be erased. The meaning was unmistakable. Inside the palace, the reaction was swift and divided. William and Harry stood apart, their faces unreadable, while Charles's grim silence spoke volumes. Camilla's expression betrayed only cold resolve. The family, once united in unspoken rules, now stood fractured under the crushing weight of a truth too heavy to bury again. Beyond the palace gates, the public response was just as volatile. To some, he was a rightful heir reclaiming his place. To others, he symbolized everything broken within the monarchy. Calls rang out for answers, for accountability, for a reckoning. No palace statement could possibly satisfy. Yet amid the chaos, there were also tears, stares of empathy, of grief, of solidarity with Diana's son, who now stood before them unhidden as he finished speaking. The cameras caught Kate watching from the sidelines, her hand resting protectively on her stomach, as though vowing to shield her own children from the same pain. The memory of Diana lingered over them, all her defiance and sorrow vindicated. At last, her story was no longer a cautionary tale, but a revolution. And as the palace gates closed and the cameras faded, one truth remained unshakable. The monarchy would never be the same again.